Decades ago, before Elon Musk became the new owner of Twitter, at the age of only 12, he wrote the code for a video game called Blaster. In 1984, Elon built his first video game, which was later sold for $500 to a computer magazine company. Quite impressive, considering kids at that age are still learning how to use Microsoft Word. His video game, Blaster, was instrumental in further bolstering his knack for entrepreneurship. Not long after, he decided to drop out of Stanford to pursue a business career. He stated in an interview,
"The internet had much more potential to change society than work in physics."
Elon's debut in real-world application of his entrepreneurial skill was exhibited right after starting his first company, Zip2. In the same year after his graduation in 1995, at age 23, Elon, his brother, Kimball, and Greg Khoury, a real estate developer and friend of their parents, would go on to co-found the web software company Zip2. Under Greg's tutelage, who was much older and more experienced, it wasn't long before Zip2 became a great success.
And then we started talking to small newspapers and media companies and so forth, and we started getting some interest. I mean, half the time we'd be like, what's the internet? Even in Silicon Valley. But then occasionally somebody would bite and we'd get a little bit of money from them.
The company, largely regarded as Elon's first official debut into the entrepreneurial world of tech, would go on to develop an internet city guide with maps, directions, and yellow pages. It wasn't long after that Zip2 started to market these services to newspaper brands that it eventually obtained contracts with the New York Times and the Chicago Tribune. According to Britannica, the startup was eventually acquired by Compaq for a whopping $307 million in 1999. That same year, Musk co-founded X.com, an online bank specialized in letting individuals transfer money directly via the web. In 2000, X.com was renamed to PayPal after a merger with its major competitor, Confinity Incorporated. 2 years in, PayPal was sold to the online auction platform, eBay, for a whopping $1.5 billion. Yes, that's $1.5 billion. A little while after, given the conviction that for life to be preserved, humanity has to transition into a multiplanetary species, Elon developed a passion for multiplanetary explorations. And right after auctioning PayPal, he was left with enough spare cash than he could know what to do with. Then he decided to pursue his lifelong dream in space exploration, and in the same year he founded Space Exploration Technologies Corp., which you may know as SpaceX. Even though having little to no experience at the start, once again, he excelled excellently in this field. However, not without its fair share of adventure, as it turned out to be one pretty good ride. Founded in El Segundo, California, in 2002, for Elon, establishing SpaceX was one hard nut to crack. In the beginning, the company was plagued with multiple setbacks and failures, partly due to Elon's inability to hire a more efficient lead architect, or partly due to his unwillingness to spend more on hires at the time. During a 2017 event in Adelaide, Australia, Elon revealed that he had to be the chief engineer, or chief designer of the company, largely because he couldn't find anyone good to join the team. During which he stated,
"We started off with just a few people who really didn't know how to make rockets."
So, what exactly made it hard for Elon to find a lead scientist for SpaceX? Was it given the shortage of outstanding space rocket engineers, or his parsimonious nature? As we are about to find out, how that makes Elon's journey even more interesting, further in this video. Following data from Wikipedia, a few years after its creation, SpaceX grew into a multi-million-dollar company from earnings in its launching orders, many of which were from the US government. By November 2005, exactly 3 years after its origination, SpaceX had grown into a company with 160 employees.
Employee base is our most valuable resource. We couldn't do the crazy, insane things that we do without the help of every individual here at SpaceX. Every employee's input counts, and we need to make sure.
And by March 2006, the company had made its official debut in the space exploration industry with its Falcon 1 launch, which turned out to be a massive failure, following a fuel leak and subsequently a fire outbreak. As a follow-up to that launch, several other efforts were made for Falcon 1 launches, exactly a year after, in March 2007, and then in August 2008, all of which were striking failures in a bid to attain Earth orbit. After several failed attempts, and after losing billions of dollars on these projects, then came bankruptcy earnestly knocking at the door of the company. SpaceX was at the verge of extinction. However, considering Elon's resilience, the company, these band of misfits spearheaded by him, were able to pull through and have a comeback like no other company on the stock market, at least not in the last 100 years. The company's fourth attempt into the Earth's orbit was a rather worrisome one than its previous attempts. This launch, which would have been the beginning of the end for SpaceX, was a make-or-break situation for the company. By September 2008, in its fourth attempt, the first successful launch was eventually achieved, which transitioned SpaceX from a company at the verge of bankruptcy into greater horizons. And from that point on, the company started to make significant progress, as it later became the first privately owned company to launch a liquid-propelled rocket into orbit. It gets even better.
Remonte la Terre.
3 months in, SpaceX would go on to win a contract agreement with NASA, worth over $1 billion for servicing the International Space Shuttle, or ISS. In a statement from his speech at the event in Australia, Elon stated,
Unfortunately, the fourth launch, which was that was the last money that we had for Falcon 1, the fourth launch worked, or that would have been it for SpaceX. But fate liked us that day. So the fourth launch worked.
And it keeps getting better. It wasn't long after the first successful launch, SpaceX achieved a successful landing and recovery of a first stage, as well as its first fully fledged successful landing. Do you want to know the best part? As the chief designer at SpaceX, with almost zero startup experience in the field, Elon was able to get the company to build cutting-edge technologies in rocket designs, such as the Dragon, the Starship, and the Falcon series. According to data from the company's website, Falcon Heavy was well equipped to carry nearly 141,000 pounds of weight to orbit. A figure which, according to Wikipedia, is nearly twice as much as its largest competitor, the Boeing company's Delta IV Heavy, for 1/3 the cost of production. Right in the middle of all of that hodgepodge, somewhere in between founding SpaceX and getting it off its feet, was Tesla Motors, an electric car company based out of San Carlos, California, which Elon co-founded alongside two co-founders, barely a year after SpaceX came into existence, in 2004. However, unlike SpaceX, which had Elon's full involvement since its inception, the foundation of Tesla was slightly different from the usual, at least for Elon. As the company originally started out with two engineers, one a computer scientist and the other a computer engineer. You might be wondering, how did Elon get into all of that mix with Tesla at the time, given he already had a lot on his plate going on with SpaceX, owing to multiple failures from the latter? How Elon managed to start up two thriving companies right at about the same time, to grow them into some of the world's most valuable corporations, is a story we might have to reserve for another day. In the meantime, let's take a little deeper dive into all of that. It's the first day of July 2003, on a Tuesday morning, during the higher summer, when it was all dry. Fog at coast. The birds are quiet, and the fall color begins to spring up in poison oak, buckeyes and ribs californicum. Not long after the General Motors electric vehicle program, better known as the GM EV program, was officially declared a giant failure in 1999. However, Two engineers who were originally founding members from the electric vehicle lineup at General Motors would not give it a rest, at least not after they had tried all they could. These two engineers were Martin Eberhard and his colleague-turned-partner, Mark Tarpenning, both of whom filed the paperwork to create Tesla Motors. A little while after, Tesla Motors was up for a funding round. In February 2004, the first round funding was held and turned out to be a huge success, with Elon being involved and by far making the largest investment. Given his insistent business acumen, Elon was able to negotiate the right to own a significant portion of Tesla's Series A funding round. And as a precondition to help close the A-round funding, he also demanded to hold the position of chairman of the board. Once again, he was able to get a great deal. According to facts from Wikipedia, by the end of the Tesla Series A funding round, which was planned for a total venture capitalist investment of $7.5 million, Elon had invested $6.5 million of his own personal money. Investing millions of dollars into a startup whose industry forerunner was already labeled a failure was pretty daring. But that turned out great for Elon, as it quickly earned him his official status as a retroactive co-founder on account of aggressive litigation. This is where it all starts to get interesting. Being the chairman of the board as early as the start of the company and participating in all of Tesla's funding rounds, from its Series A funding round through its Series E round, during which Elon was the sole investor, steadily increased his influence in Tesla. Right after, it wasn't long before Elon became the CEO of Tesla, by virtue of a few points of reference, which revolved around his involvement in co-founding the company, heavily participating in all of Tesla's funding rounds, bailing out the company during the 2008 financial crisis, essentially presented Elon as the best candidate for the job. It gets even better. Fast forward to the 2008 financial crisis. In order to survive the Great Recession, in a bid to reduce the company's burn rate, Tesla had to lay off several key personnel who had been involved with the company since its inception. Two of the company's foremost co-founders, Mark Tarpenning, who served as the vice president of electrical engineering of the company, and Martin Eberhard, who held the title of president of technology, right before quitting. And by Q4 the same year, Tesla was fully under the control of Elon, who would later go on to become the company's co-founder and CEO before the end of the year. However, Elon's glory days with Tesla was about to come to a halt. Right after sitting at the helm of affairs at Tesla, the financing for the group began to fail woefully, and consequently his other company, SolarCity, and even himself were heading for bankruptcy, all at once. On the eve of Christmas that year, Tesla, like most other companies at the time, was a few days from bankruptcy. In a tweet by Pranay Pathole, a former employee at Tesla,
on Christmas Eve 2008, Tesla funding round completed. Tesla was literally a few days from bankruptcy. Elon Musk had to put in all his money and assets. He had to borrow money from friends to pay rent. 2008 was such a difficult year. Thank you for never giving up.
Of which Elon responded,
That was a crazy tough year. Tesla financing closed at 6 p.m. Christmas Eve, last hour of the last day possible. Payroll would otherwise have bounced 2 days after Christmas.
In no time, it wasn't long until Elon was back to where he was at with SpaceX from a few years back, in a rapidly depressed state, during which he started to live out of his head, waking from nightmares, screaming and in physical pain given the stress toll on him. However, identical to his resilient demeanor, Elon wouldn't give up. In a bid to ensure Tesla doesn't become among the many companies to fold under the 2008 recession, in order to keep the company afloat, Elon had to invest his personal funds into Tesla. It wasn't until Elon was on the verge of bankruptcy before the company started to see a glimmer of hope. According to Wikipedia, by January 2009, at the time when the effects of the previous year's recession were beginning to fade out, Elon had led the company to greater achievements, from raising $187 million in funding to delivering hundreds of cars in sales. And by June that same year, Tesla had won an approval to receive a government grant, to the tune of $465 million in interest-bearing loans from the United States Department of Energy. In 2010, the company would engage in an initial public offering, during which it raised $226 million, following data from Britannica. A few months into that, Tesla had achieved overall corporate profitability, and from there on out, it was on and on to greater horizons for the company, known to be one of the most valuable tech companies on the planet. Being in and out of 3 different marriages, within the span of nearly 2 decades, Elon can be considered a family man, and a rather interesting one at that. As the billionaire investor and serial entrepreneur has never shied away from delving into all and every venture that comes his way, and the baby-making business was not an exception. In total, Elon has 9 kids, a set of twins and another set of triplets, adding up to 5 from his first marriage. 2 from his current marriage, both of whom you might find interesting given their rather unique names, Exadark Sideral and XAEA12, pronounced as X-A12. And given his quest to help populate the world,
Always have a good time here.
How's XXA12?
Sorry?
How's XXA12?
You mean my kid?
Yeah.
That sounds like a password.
his baby-making spree didn't just end there. In 2021, he fathered yet another set of twins with a top executive at one of his firms, Neuralink. Now, imagine what would have been of Tesla or SpaceX should Elon had given up on SpaceX right after his 3rd launch attempt, during which the company almost filed for bankruptcy. Or should he have opted out of Tesla at the earliest, during the aggressive 2008 recession? Well, we never know. But one thing is for certain, we all would have missed out on this great story if he had. Undoubtedly, Elon's passion for innovation, adding to his resilient demeanor and intuitive business acumen, allowed his slew of companies to witness massive comebacks into newer horizons than ever seen before.
When we first started out Tesla, I thought maybe we had optimistically a 10% chance.
Now that Elon Musk is the new owner of Twitter, do you think he will be able to free the bird? What do you think is next for Twitter? With his ambition and drive, do you think that Elon Musk will be the world's first trillionaire? I would love to hear your thoughts and comments below. If you enjoyed our video, don't forget to hit the like button, tap that subscribe button and turn on the notifications bell to get new updates from videos we post regularly. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.